Hi everybody and welcome back to Lost Genre Reddit Stories. This post is from the subreddit True of My Chest and it's by user Thoroughray Crushed Husband. My 38 male wife, 35 female, lost a lot of weight to gain the attention of her work crush. How do I move forward? After we had our kids, my wife gained a lot of weight, like 80 pounds, and honestly, I was fine with it. I thought she was still hot and my desire for intimacy never waned. So for a while, she was fine with her weight too. Fast forward 5 years and all of a sudden, my wife gets really into fitness and nutrition. She buys a Peloton, goes on a strict diet and loses all the weight and then some. She looks like she did when I met her in her early 20s. She looks great, but like I said, I thought she looked great heavy too. Then one day last week, she comes home from work and I can tell something is really bothering her. I ask what's wrong, but she's just evasive and distant. This lasts a few days before she finally breaks. She tells me that the reason she was so determined to lose weight was because she wanted attention from the guy at work she has a crush on. She said that all the women have a crush on this guy and she just wanted his attention. Well, apparently she got too much of it on the day she came home so upset. He had apparently been flirting with my wife for a few weeks and that day he asked her if she wanted to have dinner with him after work at a restaurant that just so happens to be in a hotel. He heavily implied that they could get a room afterward or even skip the restaurant and just get room service. She tells me that to this point it was all just fantasy in her head, but now it was real and she snapped out of it. She realized that she'd gone way too far. She declined his invitation, of course, and felt she needed to confess what she'd done to me. I was crushed and still am. First, I'm actually upset she told me. I know this is some form of cheating, but I didn't suspect anything. She could have just kept this to herself and not pass her burden on to me. So the thought comes to my mind that maybe she wants me to dump her so she can be with this guy and that's why she is telling me. So I ask her that and she breaks down crying. That's not what she wants. She says she loves me and just wanted to be honest with me and apologize. Nothing physical happened, I'm pretty sure of it. I can track her phone and also have pretty free access to it. She never hides it, leaves it everywhere, and that phone never leaves work. I suppose she could be cheating on her lunch break and leave the phone, but I just don't think she'd leave the phone and not be available for the kids. So I don't think I want a divorce. I love her and we have kids, but it's just eating at me that she did all the work she did to be attractive for another man. I don't know where to go or even what to ask of her. I just need some advice. OP, I agree with you that she did cheat on you on this one. It's a form of emotional cheating, I think, although she didn't take it to the level where she falls in love with the guy or something like that. It's the fact that she did all the work she did. Her whole motivation was to be attractive for another man. Now, you've stated that you don't want divorce and that you want to try to save your marriage. I don't know if I could, but since you wanted, there's two things I would do. One, that your wife does get some help in figuring out why she did this and what about her insecurities and all that. And two, that you might want to get couples counseling. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section and now let's move on to the community comments. Bonham42 says, honestly, the main thing that should stick out is that she did all of this to get the attention of another man. She claims she didn't go through with it, but honestly, it sounds like trickle truth. Personally, I don't think I could be with someone who committed so heavily for what I imagine must have been an extended period of time to lose 80 pounds for another man, when the man she had loved her no matter her weight. Think about it, all that time she was focusing on her health, she was really focusing on getting another guy. Doesn't matter if she went through with it or not. Pineapple Hamburgers says, I'm sorry, but the fact she spent what must have been at least months fawning over this guy and improving her physical health and appearance, not for herself, not for you, but for this man, doesn't bode too well for your relationship. Have you questioned her about exactly why this is happening? What did she think she would be getting with them that maybe she wouldn't with you? Why did she think so little of you to not only think of these things, but to take actual long-term action that would make the situation more likely to succeed? There are some really big, hard, and most probably hurtful answers you need before you even consider forgiving this. Faithover says, she's ultimately confessed to you and it sounds like no physical boundaries were crossed. I'm not as stuck on the motivation as other posters are. We all seek validation, some just more willing to admit it than others. She's been in a marriage, she's gained weight. She's probably not happy about. She probably wasn't getting as much flirtatious attention from men anymore. She decided to bring back her 20s body. Nothing inherently wrong with this. She's so crushed by the guilt of her motivation that she ultimately confessed the idea to you. I do understand the fear and insecurity this would cause on your end. That's very understandable. But I don't see this being a bigger issue than just communication and figuring out how to fill each other's cups now that marriage is stale and mundane. And Dr. Stooge says you need couples counseling as soon as possible. Without that, a clear path forward will be tough to find unless something else happens. So the community comments are varied between not being able to get over this, going to counseling, and some people just brushing it off because she didn't cross that line. Regardless, OP did not respond to any comments, so we move on straight to the update to see how this story ends. I want to thank everyone for commenting on my original post. I got some good advice, but above all, I just needed to vent. So thanks for listening. I talked more with my wife after my first post in an attempt to understand why she did what she did. From what she tells me, every woman in the office swoons over this guy. They all flirted with him, my wife included, and he never flirted back. A few of the single ones have basically thrown themselves at him, but still got nothing. So my wife thinks to herself that when she was younger and thinner, she could and did have guys that looked like him chase after her. So she wanted to prove to herself that she still could get the attention of a hot young guy if she wanted. Egos are not smart. To answer a common question, yes, she was very heavily flirting with him, but she says that he knew she was married, and since she didn't plan on ever being with him alone, it was harmless. Now that I think about it, she was in a great mood in the few weeks prior to her breaking down. She was kind of all over me as well. We hadn't had that much sex in years. She tells me that it wasn't so much the guy at work heating her up, but how his attention made her feel. Which, again, I've always given her plenty of attention. Why that wasn't enough to make her feel good about herself, I don't know. And that's really what hurts me most. What I thought of her didn't matter. She says what I thought did matter, but she asked me if she walked past me on the street at her heaviest, would I turn and look? I don't do that with anyone, but I would still have found her attractive. But I guess I see the point she is making. When she was younger, she did get a lot of head turns, and she got used to that. She liked the attention, and when that all went away, it made her depressed. In the end, I think we will be okay. I'll get over this, but as of now, I'm not letting her know that. I told her she needs to go to therapy and work on why she needs this external validation from people she doesn't care about. She agreed to that. Like I said in my original post, I don't think she did anything physical with him. We have Lifestyle 360 and I see where she goes, and she goes straight from home to the office and back every day. She either brings lunch or gets something delivered. I just don't think that happened. I acted cold towards her for a few days. It may have been a little cruel, but I wanted her to sweat a little and think I was questioning the relationship. Selfishly, I wanted to see her panic and try to win me back. I felt I needed to see she cares what I think of her. She was a mess, bordering on desperate. She cried a lot, which did eventually break me. I love her and couldn't stand to see her sad. So, in short, she is going to go to therapy and we will do couples counseling down the road. Thanks for all the advice, everyone. Well, OP, I'm gonna call it a positive update because it sounds like you guys do have a plan to move forward. I do hope it works out for the both of you. Take care, OP, and thanks for sharing. And now let's move on to the next post that also has an update. This post is from the subreddit Am I the A-hole, and it's by user SameEntertainer7765. Am I the a-hole for calling my cousin's ex to come get their daughter and refusing to watch her for the night? I, 15 female, used to be really close with my cousin, Cassandra, 17 female, who had her daughter, Persephone, last year. Since we're close in age, I've always supported her, especially during her pregnancy and unstable relationship with Persephone's dad. I've spent time with Persephone a lot, taking her to the park or the gallery, and when Cassandra asked me to babysit one evening while she went out with friends, I agreed because I love both of them. Everything went fine until 11:30, the time Cassandra said she'd be back. She didn't show up, didn't call, and didn't answer my texts. Since Persephone was asleep, I decided to wait, assuming she lost track of time. Hours passed with no word from Cassandra, which wasn't like her, so I got really worried. I tried contacting her friends and checking her location, but she'd turned it off. This was odd since she'd always shared her location with me. Finally, she texted around 3 a.m. saying she was staying over at a friend's because it was late and she didn't want to pay for a taxi. By this point, I was exhausted and upset. Cassandra had left me in the dark and essentially made me watch Persephone all night without asking. If she had communicated her plans, I might have agreed, but it felt unfair to assume I'd stay, especially since I am only 15. At first, I decided to wait it out until morning and talk to Cassandra later, but Persephone woke up screaming and I couldn't get her back to sleep. Feeling overwhelmed, I called Persephone's dad, Cassandra's ex, for help. After explaining the situation, he came over with his mom to pick up Persephone. I texted Cassandra to let her know where Persephone was and stayed on her sofa for the night, planning to leave in the morning. When I woke up, I had no response from Cassandra, so I went home and told my parents, who supported my decision. Later, Cassandra called me furious, accusing me of betrayal and saying I'd sided with her ex. She also claimed I had dragged Persephone into her issues with him. Despite trying to explain my perspective, she hung up. A few days later, she sent a long message reiterating how hurt she felt and blaming me for breaking her trust. Since then, I've been bombarded with messages from Cassandra's friends and even my aunt saying I shouldn't have called her ex and should have just stayed the night. But I'm confused because Persephone regularly sees her dad and has stayed at his house before, and I never agreed to watch her overnight. Was I wrong to call Persephone's dad and not wait it out, or was I right to do what I did? No, OP, you're not the a-hole. Your cousin is just trying to blame you for her F-up. She's the mom and Cassandra is her responsibility when she's with her. If Persephone spends time at her dad's, then maybe she could have waited until then to go out with her friends. So that whole guilt trip about you betraying her trust? No, she betrayed yours. She turned off her location, she wouldn't answer your calls or texts. And like you said, you're 15. Sure, it's fine to babysit your niece for a few hours, but what your cousin tried to force you into is not right. So no, you're not the a-hole, OP. It's all on Cassandra. And what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments section, and now let's check out the community comments. 77meg77 says, not the a-hole. Your cousin was taking advantage of you. No responsible mother would fail to answer her phone when her baby is being watched by someone. If there had been a medical emergency, that would have been too much pressure on you. I am thinking your cousin didn't tell you that she was planning on staying out all night because she thought you might have refused to watch her child. Her behavior was totally irresponsible. You tried to get a hold of her, and when she didn't answer, you called the baby's father. She is acting like you just went home, leaving the baby alone in the house with the front door wide open. You did the responsible things. Don't let their comments upset you. She is just feeling guilty and probably embarrassed for setting you up for an overnight babysitting without warning you. Gendered Phoenix says, you broke her trust? Hun, she broke yours. You're 15, had no clear communication, no way to see when she'd be back until super late in the night. Honestly, I don't think I would have been able to have such a clear mind at 15 to contact her ex. Among the stress of the lack of contact, the baby crying, etc., you were responsible, did the right things, still kept a mature sense of mind through all of this. Honestly, even though I don't know you, I'm proud of how you handled everything. What I don't like is how your cousin, aunt, and cousin's friends are basically harassing you, making you out to be the bad person in all of this. Don't let them drag you down though, or let them make you think that you did wrong. Them being upset at you makes no sense to me, especially since Persephone has been at her dad's house before. Because of this, you being told that you're dragging Persephone through your cousin's issues with her ex makes no sense to me. Not the a-hole. I hope this will all wind down soon and you'll be able to relax and not deal with this any longer. And Black Bong Water says, not the a-hole. She's mad at you for calling Persephone's dad because you're an overwhelmed 15-year-old with a screaming child? What else did she want you to do? You never sided with her ex, you just called so he would pick up his kid. She sounds irresponsible for a mother. Well, unsurprisingly, the community agrees that OP is not the a-hole. So now, let's move on to the update to see how this story ends. Thanks so much for all your responses. It's really reassuring to hear all your opinions, so thank you so much. I don't think I did a great job at explaining the situation fully when I wrote my original post. I was pretty upset about all the messages, so I think it came off a little bit like a huge rant. So I'll explain a few things I saw people asking questions about. The original plan for me to watch Persephone was that once Cassandra came home at 11:30, I would go to sleep at their house and she would take over. But since she didn't, I obviously wasn't going to go to sleep with Persephone in the house whilst I didn't know where my cousin was. I'm also really close with Cassandra anyway, and I sleep over a lot, so it's pretty usual for me to be sleeping there, which is why my parents didn't reach out during the whole thing. I'm realizing now that I should have called them, but it's too late now. I think this is also why she expected me to just stay and deal with the whole thing. I see a lot of people talking about how my first reaction should have been to call my parents and not Persephone's dad. And you're probably right, but that's just not what I did. My relationship with my parents isn't great, so they usually aren't my first choice in an emergency call. And I knew Persephone's dad pretty well from when he would be at my cousin's house a lot, so I thought that as her dad, I should call him first. Anyway, to start to resolve what's happening and take some of the advice given, I talked to my mom this morning and showed her the texts from my aunt and my cousin's friends. I blocked the friends, and my mom says she's going to go around and talk to my aunt later today. So hopefully that will be sorted. I also got some texts from Persephone's dad earlier, thanking me for calling him, which definitely made me feel better about this. A few of you were right, him and his mom apparently want to argue for more custody of Persephone, so that's probably what all the anger from Cassandra is about. I sent Cassandra a message explaining that I understand that she might have issues with Persephone's dad, but that in that situation where I really was out of my depth and dealing with things that were too much for me, he was the best person to call since he's the other parent and she never told me not to call him. I've not heard anything back yet, but I know she's pretty mad at me, so I don't expect anything from her soon. Thanks again for all the reassurance. I definitely won't be babysitting her again, and to the people that are saying I'm lying about ages, I don't know why I'd lie. Don't know what I'd gain from that, to be honest. Thanks for all the support and advice. Well, OP, hopefully when you do hear again from your cousin, it will be in the form of an apology, which you are definitely owed. So take care, OP, and thanks for sharing. And now let's finish this video with a quick mood booster post. This post is from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, and it's by user Armored Souls. Judge me doing my job, eh? I work an office job in charge of finance for a European company. There's this mean single woman reaching her 50s at work that always feels the need and privilege to judge everyone else. Her judging ranges from anything to how people do their jobs, their personal life choices, and even their personality and what they wear. The economy has been tough recently and pressure is high within the team, and this has manifested into lots of friction and complaints in all directions, mostly coming from her. One of the many complaints directed at me was that I wasn't protecting our sensitive data enough, saving our monthly reports in a shared drive for others to access. It has been this way for decades before I joined, and no one has an issue with it, with the sensitive data often printed out and stuck on walls anyway. Normally, I just ignore the complaints and carry on my work, as both me and my boss are good at ignoring noisy complaints with no reasoning behind. But this time, I decided to maliciously comply and now have set unique passwords for each and every file with remotely sensitive data. Now, not only does she need to keep track of all the passwords I've set, she also now has no access to some data that me and my boss decided was no longer appropriate for her to see, including what budget we have for some of her operating expenses, and now require proof of said costs, otherwise that budget is gone. Well, I guess she's really happy now that somebody was actually listening to her feedback and acted on it. Thanks for sharing, OP. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch it. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, I assume that you like these stories that I'm reading out, so here are a couple more that you might enjoy. And if you don't have any time to watch another story right now, save it for later, and also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.